It would seem to me and to you that it would be obvious, even though I will vote for Mitt Romney because he's the only logical choice. I'm very disappointed in him. He's very John McCain-ish in so many ways. I think we're almost seeing a repeat of the John McCain candidacy. He is not talking about it because of political correctness, it appears.
Let's talk about consequences. If Obama was legally found ineligible to the office of president, that ineligibility would be retroactive to his installation in the White House. In other words, if he is ineligible, then he always was ineligible. What would that mean with respect to his actions over the past 4 years? Wouldn't it invalidate everything he's done, including all laws and executive orders he's signed?
Yeah. Well, Brent, again, you've asked another $1 million question, and a lot of people have asked that. Now, I've had legal experts on my show and people whom I've consulted with, and there seems to be two schools of thought on the answer. One school of thought is, yes, everything he has done, everything he has signed, everything he's been involved in would be null and void. And some people are saying that that's the reason that Congress is not pursuing this at this point. They just want to get him out the regular way, because if they get him out by proving that he's ineligible, then we have a constitutional and a legal nightmare on our hands that they'd rather not deal with. So there's that school of thought. The other school of thought, this is the one that I hold to a little stronger, though, is that actually our constitutional republic is bigger than one man. He is not a king. He's not an emperor. He has executive orders. What he thinks he is, yeah. But executive orders, yes, those would have to be null and void, because those are really the only things that he signs off on. Now watch this, Brent. Without either congressional oversight or court oversight. So, in other words, people say, well, think of the treaties he signed and the laws he signed. Yes, but all of those required congressional oversight and or court oversight. So he has not done anything with singularity except for executive orders. So I don't know that every treaty and every law that he's put his name to would necessarily be null and void. I mean, that's something we've never faced in our nation, so there are several schools of thought. But I'm sorry, go ahead, we've got a delay.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm just saying, I seem to recall in constitutional law that if the president doesn't sign something, like a law by Congress, over a certain period of time, the law gets sent back to Congress. It's not a veto, but it's not an acceptance. I don't remember what happens. If we assume the president hasn't signed those laws, what happens to those laws that came from Congress?
Yeah. No, I think you're correct, and I don't remember either the exact name or the exact procedure, but you are correct. There is a procedure whereby the president can veto it without putting his name on it. In other words, he just doesn't sign it. And so there are all sorts of nuances to how our legal system works that really is a system of checks and balances, and that's what I was trying to say before, Brent. So if we determine that he never has been eligible, I don't think that it means we have to go back and redo every single thing that has been done he's been in office. Although, selfishly, I wish we would, because 95% of everything he's done has been to the destruction of the nation.
No question. We have our caller back. Paul is calling in from New Jersey. Paul, I'm glad you called back. Thanks for doing that. Welcome to the show. You're on the air with Carl Gallups.
Okay, good evening, gentlemen. I want to say one thing. We've been taken over a long time ago. In 1913, they passed the Federal Reserve Act and the income tax. And we were actually operating under the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, plus the 45 goals that Cleon Scott wrote about, and naked communists. And further on down the line, it only took the Federal Reserve 20 years to bankrupt us. And when they went into bankruptcy in 1933, 2 years later, they set up the U.S. Corporation. And that's where we were at. And they set aside the de jure Constitution, the National Constitution, and all of the dual constitutions in the states. And that's what we're operating under now. Statutory, I don't know, what do you call it? Statutory. It's maritime law, the Queen's law.
We're operating under public policy rather than public law, under statutory, which is non-existent jurisdiction. You're absolutely correct, Paul.
Hello? Yes, thank you. Well, I'm not a historical legal expert, but I am a reader and a researcher. And Paul, I hear what you're saying, and I agree in theory, whether or not I can prove everything you're saying. But I made the point earlier. I said about 50 years ago, the nation turned a corner, and then I got to thinking, actually, it was about 100 years ago. But about 50 years ago is when this wave of socialism and progressive attack began to hit our nation. I mean, the school systems were seized, the government entities were seized, the courts were seized, the federal courts, the media had been seized by and large, and so not the only thing standing in their way, of course, the hand of God, but humanly speaking, has been the invention of the Internet, which they hate, and talk radio, like you're listening to right now with Brent. They hate that. If they could shut down talk radio and control the Internet, they could bring in their agenda, and they're working on both of those things right now. But again, in America, we've been so busy living the dream and going to work, providing for our families and building futures for our children, that a lot of this has just escaped us. We've worked hard. We've come home at night and turned on a football game and watched a little bit of the progressive news and gone to bed. And that's what they've been counting on.
Hello?
Hello?
Any more? Yeah.
Hello. And another thing I want to tell you, after the Civil War, martial law was declared. In martial law up until 1913. That's when they set this communist Federal Reserve into action, controlled by the international bankers. And we made all U.S. citizens after the Civil War. And U.S. citizens, we're not U.S. citizens, we're American sovereigns. We haven't had a president for the United States of America since 1935. And we're now voting for the president, whatever you call him, his designation, the president of the North American region under the UN. That's why we went to war in Libya, with the UN resolution. And I call Al-Qaeda is a terrorist.
We're going to talk more about Libya next hour.
Okay. Well, I consider Okay.
All right, Paul. Well, listen, I appreciate the call. Everything you're saying is absolutely right on. I can vouch for that. I have in my files a copy of Abraham Lincoln's original General Order 100, which was the declaration of martial law. The Reconstruction era was absolutely done in military law. I have a copy of the congressional record where New Jersey, not a rebel state, was forced to accept the 14th Amendment, where the military would not allow its duly elected legislature in. That everything Paul is saying is absolutely right on, 100% correct. And Paul, I thank you for the call very, very much.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Call. Would declaring Obama ineligible to the presidency install Joe Biden as president, or would it eradicate the Obama-Biden entirely? And if the latter, what happens then? Does John Boehner take over? Do the Democrats find another candidate, such as Hillary, for president this year? What a mess.
Yes. Well, Brett, that question has been asked. And again, there's unprecedented in U.S. history, and there are several schools of thought. If Obama is found unconstitutional, then Joe Biden, the one possibility is Joe Biden would take office as vice president, because he's not unconstitutional, although he ran on that ticket. But again, if they both are put out, then yes, John Boehner would go in. But I'm going to tell you, Brett, I don't think any of that's going to happen before the election now. I really don't. I think that there is a concerted effort on the part of what we would call conservatives to get him out of office and be done with the scourge, the plague of this administration, and to move forward and to kind of wipe their hands from it. I am a little, I'm disgruntled by that. I'm disappointed by that, but I understand, I suppose, at the human level what they're trying to pull off. On the other hand, if he goes back in office, then this fight is not over, and we will have to double up our efforts to prove his unconstitutionality and get him out on that ground.
Ken is calling in from Minnesota. Ken, welcome to the show. You're on with Carl Gallups.
Yes, thank you very much. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, starting at verse 43, if you read, it talks about the foreigner getting up above you, and it says in there that he will stay there until we are utterly destroyed. So as far as this election goes, Obama will be there. He will not be leaving office. If he leaves office, I've got 4 or 5 Bibles and a couple of concordances for sale, and I don't believe I'll be selling them.
Carl?
Well, listen, I'm quickly trying to get to Deuteronomy 28. I've such a poor connection. I only heard about 80% of what you said. Brent, do you think you can repeat for me what Ken said?
Yeah, Ken, what was the section of Deuteronomy again?
Starting at verse 43 to the end of the chapter, it says that the foreigner will get above you until you are utterly destroyed. Well, we're not utterly destroyed, and he is above us.
Well, the assumption, of course, is Obama is the one being described there. He's talking, Carl, about verse 43 to the end.
Yes. Well, first of all, context is extremely important when interpreting the Scripture. Deuteronomy 28:43 and following, and really has nothing to do with American politics in specific. That was written to and for the Israelites when they were coming out of Egypt and going into the Promised Land. It was given even before they set foot in the Promised Land. And it was just a warning about intermingling and mixing with foreigners and allowing them to come above you. So the principle, though, the principle, Ken, is correct. And whether we can extrapolate that directly and say that proves that Obama will not be voted out, I don't think we can do that. But the biblical principle, you're absolutely correct, Ken, is that when a nation allows foreigners to rule them, they're asking for nothing but. And there are several nations of the world, by the way, Brent, and a lot of missions work, that they allow foreigners to be their presidents, their heads of state. And the countries that I know of where that's happened, they've had nothing but trouble. So we don't allow that in the United States. However, we may be doing that right now.
Kim, thank you for the call, and please don't sell your Bibles and concordances just quite yet. Appreciate the call, Kim. All right, here's the $64,000 one for you, Carl. If Obama is ineligible to be president, yet he is allowed to remain in that office, and or his actions these past 4 years are allowed to stand, that would appear to indicate the United States government has abandoned all pretense of following the rule of law. If the government has abandoned the rule of law, then isn't it time for a second American Revolution? And if not, then when and under what circumstances would it be time?
Yeah. Well, Brent, you have beautifully and succinctly stated it, and stated as you stated. My opinion is that it would be time for a second revolution, and not just because I'm an extremist or a sensationalist. Remember, I'm a former law enforcement officer and the current pastor for 26 years. I do not live for a revolution, and I know that revolutions or civil wars are horrible. However, our own Declaration of Independence, Brent, our own founding fathers proclaimed that when the people above you, over you, in our case it was a king, in our case it's a president who thinks he's a king, that our own founding fathers declared that when they usurp those powers and usurp those rights and trample over our God-given rights and throw the law to the ground, that it is time for the people to throw off that government and to establish a new government. Our own founding documents declare that, Brent.
Absolutely. And when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to fill out the political balance of another, when it becomes necessary, absolutely right. How do people get more information about Magic Man and your work, Carl?
Thank you. The quick way is just go to my website, Gallups.com, Gallups. Everything about me is there. My radio program, my book, my ministry, my church, all of my videos, the social networking links to a massive worldwide ministry. My book is entitled The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. And I got to stop. I will make sure we have a link up to that. It's www.Gallups, Gallups,